So I'm delighted to be joined by Brian Cox. Brian, in your autobiography, I think it's called Putting the Rabbit in the Hat, which is actually a brilliant title. I don't know if everybody wants to actually... Anybody want to have a look at it? There we go. There we go, I'm showing it to you. Advert done. One of the things that you imply, or in fact say, is that there's rather too much entitlement around today. You think it... Many would agree with you. I think it destroys people. Now, curiously, having watched all the seasons of Succession, it seems to me that's something that you and Logan Roy might agree about.
Possibly. I think he would...
He doesn't like the entitlement of his children, does he?
Well, no, and he feels his children have... He's lost. I mean, the problem for Logan is he loves his children, and that's the difficulty, because that was the thing I asked Jesse Armstrong, right at the word go. I said, because I kept thinking, the way this man behaves towards his... Does he love his children? And he said, no, he very much loves his children. So that creates the dilemma, and it is a big dilemma. And, of course, our show has an element, a strong satirical element to it. You know, that we're reflecting society as it is, and what we've seen is this whole thing of entitlement. We've seen it with the Trumps. We've seen it today with Andrew. You know, that's an example of entitlement. You know, where is that? Who's going to pay? Who's going to pay for that, all that money that he's going to be paying to that young woman? Has he got it? And how much money is it? And again, that's what's happening more and more. And of course, for the ordinary kind of member of society, that is alienating, more and more alienating, that people are allowed to get away with this. And of course, they feel it because they don't know anything better. And the children, the Roy children, feel it because they've never learned anything else. And it's very hard for Logan, who's a self-made man, to tell them. He does say at the end of this last series, he says, I'm not going to swear, but he just say, can I swear?
Yes.
He says, make your own fucking pile, you know, which is what he says to his children, which is his ultimate frustration. And, of course, it's the nub of really what the dilemma of the show is about.
No, it is. I mean, the other... Apparently I'm supposed to apologise for encouraging you to swear. But anyway, that's my career over. Now...
well, my career is based on my swearing.
Yeah, never did you any harm. Now, if we could also look at another characteristic of Logan Roy, apart from loving his children, is... he is a sociopath, and one of the things that I've observed, actually, funny enough, I've also read a bit of fiction about this, just the sheer number of sociopaths that get to the top of business, they get to the top of politics. What is it about sociopaths that means we don't only tolerate them, at the moment we seem to welcome them at the top of our institutions?
It's the curse of the age. You know, if you've lived through, as I lived through... I mean, it's ironic that our first read-through of the show was the day that Trump was elected. And everybody was going back after the show, after the read-through, to see Hillary be elected. I didn't go because I knew it wasn't going to happen. Yeah. And I actually believe she lost it as much as he won it. Yeah. And I just felt that, you know, it's just this whole thing of kind of irresponsible behaviour. They behave irresponsibly because they feel they're entitled to it. And Logan feels he's entitled because he's come up the hard way and he's done it all on his own, so therefore he's also a misanthrope. Yeah. And I think he's much more of a misanthrope than he is a sociopath, actually.
Yeah, OK, essentially. Well, look, there's so much more I need to discuss with you. Don't go away. Tons more from Brian Cox, Emily and Bob in just a minute or two. I'm sure Brian Cox is still here. Again, like Logan Roy, you personally came from a pretty working-class background. Now, one of the things that is striking is you made your name at a period of genuine social mobility in this country.
The only time we've really had it.
And if you look around the sort of actors today, many of them, 20, 30 years younger than you, they went to Eton, they went to the other sort of leading independent fee-paying schools.
Harrow, Eton.
Why? What's gone wrong in... Many people would say that is something going wrong, because it means there aren't as many opportunities out there.
That is the $20 million question, what's gone wrong? I mean, I think we've deteriorated. You know, the 60s was an extraordinary time. I mean, I came from Dundee, which is where I'm from. I came to London. I didn't have... I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. But I'd worked in the theatre. I didn't even have a proper education. I had no qualifications whatsoever. I auditioned. I got into the drama school. And the Scottish Education Authority, and that we weren't particularly rich then, gave me a grant for... I paid for all my fees. I paid for my living allowance. And I also had expenses as well. And it was an extraordinary time, absolutely extraordinary time. And it was the time of great social mobility. So you had people like Albert Finney, people like Tom Courtenay, a whole Peter O'Toole, the whole sort of phalanx, and they were before me, who came and led the way. Nowadays, I mean, and I have to be very careful what I say, because I'm not criticizing any of these actors from the Eton or the...
Well, some of them are very good actors.
Some of them are wonderful. Benedict Cumberbatch, you know, Eddie Redmayne, some of them are very talented. But there is a gap now. You know, certain kids cannot get to the theatre because there's no... I mean, there's still people doing it, but there was a major thoroughfare that you could go down towards something, and now that thoroughfare is gone. It's all little side roads that lead to the centre square.
But if you think about how you sort of paid your way, I mean... that might give us some clue as to what's different now, as it were. Is it just that you can't afford to live in a place like London because rents are too high? Or
you couldn't. I mean, I paid £3.50 for a bedsitter in Earl's Court a week, and I could afford to live in London. You know, I mean, that couldn't happen nowadays. I mean, people who actually even earn a living. You know, you get kids. You know, they'll take over a house, and 7 of them will be sharing. You know, 7 couples will be sharing a house together. I mean, it's got out of hand. It's just got ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
And is there an analogy in, you know, political life two out of the last 3 prime ministers from Eton after decades when we didn't see an Etonian prime minister? I mean, you know, this is not an anti-Eton point. It is just we thought social mobility was what, in a sense, justified our sort of system, and it's been frozen to an extent.
Yeah. I mean, I get your point about how difficult it is, and I think that if you move into professions where you don't get an easy, where you don't get employed afterwards and you get money, then the idea of getting yourself trained and getting really into debt means that people from ordinary backgrounds who've never been brought up in a family where debt's okay can do it. So, I mean, I found it with the bar. So becoming a barrister, and I had a grant, so I was all right, you know, when I went in to train to be a barrister, but I couldn't have done it otherwise because I couldn't have afforded to got myself into God knows how many thousands of pounds worth of debt and then got into an insecure profession after that. It must be the same with acting. I mean, I don't really know what to say to you. I mean, we've had 12 years of a Tory government and we've had 2 prime ministers from Eton. I mean, what do you want me to say?
But it's also the case that even when, because the statistics now show this, even when New Labour was in power, at that point, social mobility was just not operating in the way that it was in the 60s, frankly. So there's something very fundamental that went wrong.
I think you have to absolutely consciously work at it. I think you have to have it as one of the things that you have at the top of your list of what it is that you want to achieve.
And that's the problem, that people have lost the plot, that they're not consciously working. And the Labour Party also lost it for quite a long time. Initially, I did the Voice of Labour in 1997.
I know.
And it was an amazing period. It was an extraordinary period. And I thought it was all going to be magnificent. But then Iraq and what happened, and the Million Man March, which went for nothing. And I just feel now that we've lost the plot on so many levels. And now we have a compulsive liar who's actually leading the country. Yeah. And that liar is tolerated. And I find it extraordinary. I come back here, and there's this man who cannot help. He cannot tell. He wouldn't know the truth of it.
So I've got to ask Bob if he was to defend this particular individual.
But the important point is to have a true commitment to equality. And that's the point, isn't it? And that means real equality.
Emily, I've got to let Bob come in, see if he's going to defend his Prime Minister.
Go on, Bob.
Boris has many fine qualities. He has occasionally skirted around some issues in a way that he shouldn't. I hope we get over this period, and I hope he makes these apologies, and I hope they mean something. I have found him to be just really intellectually engaged and a good person when I deal with him. So I'm gonna stick up to him. That's then. I wish these wretched Partygate hadn't been happening.
Well, you've done your bit, because unfortunately, though, we are now out of time. Next week, we will get Boris Johnson's plan for living with COVID. Will he be around to roll it out? Tune in to find out. Goodbye.